Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the beautiful panel session. Thank you so much, Ms. Nancy. Thank you, Dr. Ayotunde. Thank you, Dr. Toluwanimi. Thank you. It was such an insightful session. So, moving forward in this beautiful workshop, we'll be having the product teardown session, which will be taken by no other person than Dr. Opeyimika Aremu. Dr. Opeyimika Aremu is an HealthTech professional with expertise in product development and analysis. He's the CEO of Sling Labs and he specializes in helping teams build impactful and user-centered healthcare solutions. So without further ado, we'll be inviting Dr. Aremu. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction again. It's Opeyimika, not Olayimika, but thank you so much. It's really nice to be here. I really hope that everyone can hear me clearly. If you can hear me, please just put a thumbs up. Like just react with a thumbs up. That'll be really nice. Okay. Thank you so much. I will just go ahead and share my slides as I then talk to them. Yeah. So where are my slides? Okay. So first, what this means is that I cannot actually see the chat anymore, right? But I really hope that at the end of this conversation, we can, if you have questions, you have dropped it in the chat, or you have kept them, and then we can talk about it after. But yes, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much to HealthTech and iCube who's sponsoring the event and like powering it. It's really nice. Thanks so much for the invite. And thank you to Pelume, Blessing, and everyone else in the HealthTech team, Tolu, who have all been patient and kind. They've reached out and have been involved in the process of getting us here right now talking about ML Tech products. Yeah. So the topic for today is product teardown, how HealthTech products actually work. So you have an idea. How do you take that idea from just something in your mind to something that is working and then is serving patients and serving doctors and just serving everyone involved in the HealthTech ecosystem? So as mentioned, I'm Dr. Opeyimika Aremu. I'm the CEO of Sling Labs. And at Sling Labs, we believe that the combination of clinical expertise, domain experience, right, and then technical skills, right, would be really impactful in revolutionizing healthcare technology in Nigeria, in Africa, and globally. And so we are an agency that helps founders who also realize that in terms of helping them build the ideas that they have into working products and just staying in the flow with them and helping them navigate the process of building those products and having those products serve like actual users. Yes. So next slide. So what are we going to be covering today? One is the HealthTech landscape, right? Where we are in Africa and the opportunity that exists. And then why tech alone is not enough. I think that the panel session has gone on and on about the tech, the coding, the AI. And yes, I will be doing some of that in this conversation, but it's also important to realize that in Nigeria and Africa, the decider often is not the tech, and we'll be talking about that. Then also just talking about some of the language or the words that we throw around in healthcare technology and helping you understand it in a way that is a lot more contextual or like easy for you to grasp. And then also taking a product, right? So pharmacy. And the reason why I chose pharmacy is that they're a really public company, right? What that means is they're talking about the work that they're doing on LinkedIn. They are also design centric, right? They believe in great design. They believe in great design from the user experience, like how users, patients and patient relatives, doctors, how they, even pharmacy owners, how they interact with pharmacy, right? But also the way it looks like their brand is really good. And what is clear is that they care about the product that they are building. And so this is one of the products that I'm like really excited about talking about. And it's coming from Nigeria, right? For Nigerians. And that's really good. So yes, how do you start building today as a clinician, a nurse, a doctor, or anybody just interested in healthcare technology and the opportunities in it, right? And then Q&A is just a question and answer session where you can talk about like what you have in mind to build, the problems you're having, um, just anything on your mind related to the teardown. Yes. So now let's talk about the landscape right now in Africa. So HealthTech is experiencing the revolution that fintech experienced in 2016, 2017. And if you really think about it now, Paystack, Flutterwave, and all of those companies are clocking 10 this year, right? So what that means is that there is a small period of time where things can happen really fast and that the problems become obvious to everyone. And not just obvious, but like it becomes ripe for solving. And so right now, there's really tangible reason to believe that for healthcare technology, the time is now. And so first is the doctor to patient ratio, 1 to 5,000. And WHO recommends 1 to 600. Then also 88% of healthcare interactions end with a medication. What that means is if you see a doctor, you are likely to need a drug, right? And that the opportunity is worth over $11 billion, right? And then that 200 million of us are actually underserved by traditional health systems. What that means is we go to the hospital, we wait a lot for a test, wait a lot for consultation, overwhelmed by it. We have an emergency, we can't see a doctor on time, or we need to travel a long distance to see a doctor. And so what this means is that the gap is the opportunity, right? Every product that we're talking about today, every founder that we're talking about today, saw these numbers and how difficult it must be to try to solve it and decided to go on regardless. So yes, so 4 problem areas that Nigerian healthcare startups have started to solve for or have been solving for quite some time. So first is pharmacy and supply chain. And one of them is just pharmacy, remedial health and drug stock. And this problem space is just about one, how do you get drugs to pharmacies, right? So drugs that are produced by pharmaceutical companies, how do you get to pharmacies? How do you ensure that when a drug is about to finish, is replaced? How do you ensure that the drugs that are actually in the pharmacies are not fake drugs? And that how do you ensure that everything in the country is not affecting drugs in terms of security, right? Like as you're transporting these drugs, how do you ensure that the cars don't break down, right? Or the car that is transporting drugs don't break down, or that they don't have accidents. So all of these things are the problems that these companies are actually solving and they're making rapid progress doing. So there's also telemedicine and remote care, which is how can a patient who's in a remote village or a rural village to speak to a doctor, right? And have access to care. And so some companies that are doing that, that are trying to solve this problem include Reliance, HMO, Million Health. And Million Health is one of the largest health tech companies in Africa. And then also diagnostics and AI, where possibilities are boundless now. As Intron Health, what they do is they allow for documentation via like speech, right? They record the speech of the doctor and then they document for the doctor. And the interesting use cases for like all of the things that they're building at Intron Health. Then there's ELA, who's trying to also ensure like interoperability and connecting all of the fragmented aspects of healthcare, while including laboratories, consultations, and just being able to offer it across the Nigerian healthcare system. Then also there's EHR and health data. This is the problem that everyone is really focused on, like really solving these days in Nigeria, because it's a problem that if well solved could really, really transform the healthcare ecosystem in Nigeria, right? If you go to an hospital today, it's most likely that you will be treated, you'll be given a card that is on paper. You would be seen by a doctor who would write your history or like the problem you have come with or your complaints right on paper. who would write your treatment on paper, who would write your prescription sheet on paper. And all of this ensures that one critical point of failure is that if the paper you just the paper you were giving gets lost, if the storage where case notes are in the hospital gets bombed or gets drowned or something, a lot of information is gone, a lot of useful information is gone, and then we have to start afresh. So some companies that are truly trying to solve this problem is Helium Health, Field Intelligence, and CubeMD. So yes, so next slide is just so Samuel Anuada, who's the CEO of Remedial Health, was on a podcast recently, and podcast is PC Timmy's Founders Connect. And it was just talking about the story of Remedial Health. And right now, Remedial Health is like 4 or 5 years old. And one quote that I thought was really interesting from what he said is that we were health tech before the tech. And like what that means is that for the first year of Remedial Health, right, there was no apps, there was no dashboard, there was just one phone number, one WhatsApp line, and then people scrambling to deliver medicines. What that meant was that if you wanted, as a pharmacy owner, if you wanted their drugs, you would call them and say, hey, please, could you send this carton of this particular drug, or could you send this list of drugs to my pharmacy, right? Or they would type it on WhatsApp and send it to them, right? And so technology came after the workflow worked, right? Like they had established a way to really solve the problems of their users before they then really built the technology part of it, right? And so right now, Remedial Health has raised over $50 million. They have over 450 people working at the company. And so this is proof that if you really focus on the health part and solving the problem first, right, without like obsessing about the technology, there could be something important there for you. So yes, so there are 3 layers that every health tech product has. And so I'm trying here to ensure that we are not particularly focusing on just technology or how do we write the code, how do we build the AI. No, there's a lot more that goes into it, and there's a lot more that ensures success if we really keep the 3 parts in view. And so first is technology, right? This is the part of the product that allows us to be able to say, okay, this product now has 5,000 users, right? We are able to say, okay, 5,000 people can come on board and speak to a doctor every day, right? But it's still that same technology that allows you to be able to say, okay, now 50,000 users and they come every day to speak to a doctor. What has changed? The things that have changed are a lot more about the operation side of things, of that, okay, how do we get more doctors on board, right? How do we get more doctors to be able to speak to these patients? But the technology part of, okay, how can these patients use their phone and see a doctor in 5 minutes or see a doctor in 2 minutes time? That has not changed, right? So what that means is that technology can rapidly grow with the amount of users that you have without much human power. And that's one of the use cases of AI that gets people very excited. It's like, okay, one, for example, some clinics will close for the day, right? And say, oh, now we cannot attend to any patients again. Or now it's just people on call that can attend to patients. But what if a patient can call and have an AI take all of their history, and then by the time they're speaking to a doctor, the doctor has already seen all of the all of the history already taken properly by the AI, and then doctor can then think about the problem that the patient could be having and then solve it, right? So there's the technology side of things can include apps, APIs, AI models, dashboards, just anything that helps you scale or like allows the patient be able to interact with the product, right? And so, for example, pharmacy has an AI product where they take in 8,000 plus drug names. And like what this means is that, for example, you will have like for each pharmacy, the way they name their drugs could be different, but drugs, the same name or like different names for the same drug. And so how can we ensure that we can normalize it in a way that it becomes a standard of that, okay, if we see paracetamol here, we know that this is this paracetamol, no matter the nickname we use, no matter the brand name they use, okay, this is also still paracetamol. And then the operation side of things, which is just like logistics, warehouses, partnerships, regulation, right? And as I've mentioned, and Remedial has over 100 vehicles, right? And 3 warehouses. And I think one of the interesting stats that Samuel mentioned in the podcast episode was that they have at least, I'm trying to be safe here, but I think at least 30 vehicles on the road every single day of the year, right? So what that means is that there's so many points of failure there where a driver can run away with the car. And one of the interesting like stories or like tactics that you mentioned that they've discovered is that if they have a driver and they have a bus boy, right, somebody who's also in the bus with the driver, right, that one thing that the person does is that the person can help the driver load the vehicle with drugs, but also is that if the driver wants to steal the bus or run away with the bus or give an excuse of the tire like busting if it didn't bust, or like taking money to buy fuel but not remitting, not buying as much fuel as he has taken money for, if we have to agree with the bus boy, right? And so all of these problems are interesting operation problems, but they are also critical problems to solve if you want to have an HealthTech product that actually succeeds. Then there's also marketing, right? How do you get people to care about the product? How do you get people to know about your product, right? I think Nancy on the panel also mentioned this. I think I actually also mentioned this, that as you are building yourself and you are building a product, you have to talk about it. Today, I mentioned that he had built a data set, right, for cardiology, but the way people knew about it and the way he got opportunities for it was that he wrote a Medium article on it, right? And so what that means is that the storytelling, the community. How did I know Samuel Okwada's like story of building remedial health in so much detail? He went on a podcast, on a YouTube podcast, and I found that podcast and I watched it, like it's a 1 hour long podcast, right? So these are ways where you get people to care, you get people to start to use the product. And all of these 3 parts are very important in building an HealthTech product. So let me just quickly check the chat to ensure that you have not lost anybody. Please, if you can hear me well, just put a thumbs up again. Splendid. Okay, thank you so much. Yes. So what are the vocabulary that you need to know at least to be able to get started in HealthTech? Is that one? There's something called APIs, right? APIs is like you are at a restaurant, right? You want to order food, right? But the person who's taking your order is the waiter, right? You tell the waiter, okay, please, I want jollof rice, I want fried rice, 2 spoons, I want egg, and moi, and then meat, right? The waiter then goes to the back, puts the order in, and then they bring the food like maybe 10, 15 minutes later. Right? If it's a cafeteria, the food is already in front of them, so they're just serving it. But the point of what I'm saying is APIs are a way where you can communicate your intention and then have the results, right, gotten back to you. And so API just means application programming layer, application programming interface, right? What that means is you have the front end. The front end is what you can see, right? If you look at WhatsApp today, you can see like beautiful colors. You can see the green chart, like which is your own. You can see the white, like which is from the other person. But the back end is okay. These are the messages, right? If you keep scrolling up, you see messages from January. Where did that come from? That came from the back end, right? What that means is you have sent a request that I want to see my messages from the past. I want to keep scrolling up and see my messages, right? Look at the statuses. You will see that, oh, okay, you can see this person's status now. But where did that status come from? You have indicated that, okay, now I want to view this person's status. So it has brought it from the back end, right? And so what that means is the communication between what you can see and the information that exists is the API. And so LLM wrapper, I think there's nobody on this call who has not heard of an LLM, right? So LLMs are just AI models, right, like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, and just so on like that. And so purpose for it would just mean, okay, I want to take ChatGPT, for example, but I want it to just answer questions about malaria, right? Like what that means is that you have put something on top of the LLM, right? You have said, okay, this is just what I want it to be known for. This is what I want it to do a great job at. And yes, so the next one is IPA/NDPR. So for US or building products in the US, IPA is like the regulatory framework for how to build for that. But then the PR is Nigeria's version, which is like Nigerian data privacy regulations. And the core of it is that patient information is sacred and should be secure, right? And yes, so next one will just be EHR, which is electronic health record. If you are in an hospital where like an EHR is being used, you would already understand what I'm saying. But EHR is just how do we take patients like record, which is okay, like a patient sees a doctor today. How do we take that case note online, right? So that's what EHRs are, right? A system for like managing patient records, but it's on a computer, right? It's searchable, it's shareable, and then you can take it from clinic to clinic, right? Then interoperability is actually, this is one of the most important problems that we're trying to solve in EHR systems, or like just solving in Nigeria right now, is that how can you ensure that the records that the hospital has and the records that the lab has, for example, or the records that the pharmacy has, or the records that just any other partner, right? How can you take the information that you have given to an hospital, for example, right? You have been going to a private hospital for the last 10 years in Lagos, but you have just received news that you and your husband are moving to Calabar to continue work there, right? How do you ensure that like the hospital in Calabar has all of the information about your health that the hospital in Lagos has had for the last 10 years, right? Because the interesting thing about our bodies is that it never starts afresh on any single day. We are a product of the last 10 years, last 20 or 30 years that we have lived on Earth. And so what that means is that our data as human beings, right, in terms of our health is super important. And it's one of the problems to actually keep solving, right? And then cloud and backend. Oh, somebody raised their hand. Sorry, please. Okay. Okay, it's a question. I would answer at the end. So yes, so cloud and backend is that if you press order, right, on pharmacy, for example, that you want to order a drug, what happens is that then they they keep your request, right? They store your request and then they start processing it. All of that happens in the backend. You don't see any of that. But then now we'll then go on and talk about like this in detail. So now let's talk about pharmacy. So a patient goes on pharmacy's app, for example, and then they say, oh, okay, my mom has high blood pressure. She uses labetalol, right? Or she's using nifedipine. Please, I want to be able to order the drug, right? What would have to happen is one, they'll type in the name of the drug, right? They'll see pharmacies nearby that has that drug, right? They'll see the prices that these pharmacies are selling them, and then they'll choose one. They'll choose their own pharmacy, and then they order the drug, and then they can choose the delivery option. Okay, I want you to deliver it now, or I will go to the pharmacy myself to pick it up, right? And then they will pay, and then drugs will arrive at their houses, or like they will go and get it, right? But what happens under the hood? What happens as you're making all of this process happen? There's like 1,000 pharmacies in their network, right? And so the nearby pharmacies are coming from that database of information, right? You are seeing the drugs and the prices for them. That is coming from the database where they have over 8,000 medications, right? You are seeing that, oh, because of this, patients are able to get their drugs more. And so the excuses of, oh, my drug finished, there's no way for me to get it in Lagos, reduces. So there's a lot more patient adherence. Like patients actually use the drugs they paid for and have gotten, right? Then there's also the the delivery time, because patient can get his drug, he can actually use his drug, right? And then that some of the like more of their customers are women, right? And yeah. So the next question is, how do you build this, right? And now I'm focusing on just like the technology part of it. Is that okay? One, there's the app. Okay, so the app was built. So the app works on Android. It also works on an Apple device, which is an iPhone. So how do you do that, right? You can use a language called React Native or Flutter, right, to build it. But there are other options for building it, right? But what's more important is that there's an app to build, right, that allows a, that the patient can use to actually order these drugs. Then there's the search, right? Patients actually searching between across 1,000 pharmacies, right, to find the right price, right? And then also there's the checkout, right? The patient or the patient relatives puts in their payment information and then they pay, right? And then they can even schedule recurring refills. What this means is that, okay, you order a drug. I don't want to keep coming back to order this drug. Now that I've ordered this drug, please just remember that in the next 3 months, I want to order this drug again. So send the drug to me, right? Yeah. And then the other one is just live order tracking, right? Oh, they're using, they're sending the drug via like a car driver or a delivery bicycle, right? How can you track the driver? And all of this is in the app, right? So the tech behind it is just okay. One, the framework of like building the app, so React Native and Flutter. So maps, right? You're able to see, oh, this is where the driver is now. This is he, how many minutes away he is. Then, oh, this is how you pay, like using pay stack or Flutter Wave. Like all of these are actually just assumptions, right? But then, so you may also send the push notifications. And what this means is just notifications of, oh, the driver is here now, and go and get your drugs. So there is Firebase for that. Then also, oh, like when you log in into the app, they'll tell you, okay, we have sent you an SMS. Check the SMS, type in the code that you get, right? So all of these things are super important, right? So that's the first layer, which is what the patient experiences or like the person who's using the product experiences. But then there's another layer, which is the brain. Like, so this is actually the part that is a lot more technical. So for example, they have something called Symphony AI, right? And I think I mentioned that there where it's just a way of normalizing drugs, right? So if, for example, they are working with the 1,000 pharmacies that they are working with, the names of drugs would likely be different across pharmacies. So how can we ensure that no matter the name with which a pharmacist stores a drug, how can we ensure that we are all aligned, right? How can we ensure that if a patient needs a drug and then types in a particular name, we will be able to find that drug across all of the pharmacies near that patient or patient relative. The second thing is just formulary engine, which is okay, let's actually store as many medications as possible. And so first is that they have a the ability from like WHO essential medicines list and then just sales data. And so what this means, for example, is that when a pharmacy is onboarded, right, and then they upload their inventory to it, they can kind of say, okay, these are the drugs that we have, these are the drugs we don't have, these are the drugs we should buy, and so on like that. Like, so it's just a really, really detailed way of helping pharmacists get on board and also structuring their medications in a way where they are ready to be recommended to patients, right? And then the third one is just a prescribed API. And what this means is that how can we connect a doctor and a pharmacy quickly, where that if a doctor comes on board on pharmacy or like a clinic or an hospital comes on board on pharmacy, they can send, when they write prescriptions, they can just send it to any pharmacy like nearby the patient, and then the patient will be able to just go to the pharmacy to get it, or also use pharmacies delivery options to get it at their doorstep, right? And this is like the unsexy technical part that most people would not see, right? And so, for example, if you actually want to see a doctor today and you don't want to go to UCH, for example, right? So you think of, okay, let me use my insurance provider, which can be Reliance HMO, and you say, oh, let me speak to their doctor. And then you are seeing the doctor face to face. There's a lot of technology that has gone into how can I see my doctor face to face, even with the bad network that we have in Nigeria, right? And so the third layer is operations. And I've mentioned this before, but this is the part where, if not gotten right, the company would not be able to deliver a great service to their customers. And so what that means, for example, is that, okay, pharmacy, for example, has like 1,000 pharmacies, right? And so it's like, okay, they have sales rep who are going out there to bring on board pharmacies. And so what that means too is that there's a lot of relationship building that needs to happen, right? Then also, how do we then take these drugs and get them in the hands of the users, which is through like riders or dispatch riders, and then like just, and this can be built in-house, or they can use like delivery options that are available, right? And then also is servers or like cloud, right? As I've mentioned, there could be 5,000 people using the product today, or tomorrow there could be 50,000. How do you ensure that every single person, or as many people as possible, have a great experience, right? So this is where the the cloud deployment, the way they build the backend to be able to retrieve this information is important. And then actually, so is somebody saying something? Okay. So this is actually important because, so for example, we have all used WhatsApp, right? And so sometimes we know that we'll just like realize that WhatsApp is down. We can't receive our messages anymore, right? So like what this means is that, well, maybe like one of the servers is down, right? And yeah. So the next one is compliance, right? I've mentioned this before, that patient data is actually sensitive, right? Imagine if you knew that your governor, for example, has cancer. That is information that can really change things in a country or like in a state where, like, oh, okay, should we be worried? Should he be impeached, or should he hand over to his deputy because he's not in good health? So what this means in general is that patient data is sensitive. It can be used and abused if inappropriately built or exposed. And so, yeah, so for example, also is that credentials of like pharmacists on the platform, like for pharmacy, should be verified, right? In terms of just, okay, how do we comply and ensure that the people on the platform too, who are seeing patients, who are satisfying patients, are verified and are competent. So the next thing is just growth tools, right? All of these things are important in terms of even building a product, right? In terms of how do you get the word out there? How do you get more people to learn about what you are building, right? And so for pharmacy, for example, they have a product called Care Capital, where they bring on like 50 pharmacies led and owned by women, and then they empower them. They empower them with like information, access to to a community of other women building pharmacies, and also capital, right? And so on like that. Also provider partnerships, right? So there is like 40 telemedicine and HMO partners who are writing prescriptions through the API. Because imagine, or like a doctor sees a patient through their phone, and then just being able to say, okay, buy this drug, buy this drug, buy this drug. And then just through the connection with with pharmacy's API, they're able to, their patients are immediately able to place an order for the drugs. And yeah, so yes, now the whole picture is just, yes, there are users and patients and doctors and telemedicine providers and even pharmacy owners. But the core parts of it is one, the front end, which is the mobile app. There's also a web dashboard and a provider portal, right? Then there's the AI and logic parts, which is how does the patient get the drug? How do we make the experience of getting the drug like a lot more um, pleasurable or satisfactory? Then like the back end and operations, and all of these parts are really important for like scaling a product, right? You have an idea, you have built it, and then you want to you have built it, and then people are starting to use it. How do you ensure that the experience that everybody or as many people as use the product have is reliable, is satisfactory, and always works? Yes. So what this means is the patient, for example, taps their screen and place an order. This goes down, right? And then the response goes back up. Like, so what that means is that when they tap to pay, to go to pay stack, right? And then come back up again. So all of these things are like really, really important. So then, how do you get started? As a clinician or like anybody who's on this call who has stayed for this long, just learning about how to build or like how to even build an health tech product, right? How can you start? So one is just, there's a lot of products you can use these days to just get started. But I think the most important thing is the mentality, like your mindset. Do you believe that the idea you have is worth the shot? Do you even have an idea? And I think one way to think about ideas is, what problems are you facing at your workplace that you think that technology can solve, right? And you can like start from there, right? But the best thing is also to take that idea you have and put it in ChatGPT, right? A lot of us use ChatGPT every single day, or Claude or Gemini, and put it there and then say, oh, this is the idea that I have. How can I make it better? How can I start, right? And so there's Claude Code and Codex. So Codex is by OpenAI, Claude Code is by Anthropic. And like these are agents that you can also use to get started to code or to write the code to build the idea that you have. And then Lovable VO and Bolt. These are different products, but all of these products that I've mentioned so far do similar things. But I think Lovable VO and Bolt is just, how can you type and already like have something, right? And see something and see that, okay, this works, right? For all of these products now, we use English, right? It's not that you're writing the code yourself. It's just, oh, I want to build this. And so what that also means is that you're better served knowing some code or watching some coding videos in your free time, right? But the most important thing is to get started. And like what I mean by get started is not allow the excuse of I don't know how to code to stop you from already building something or from already trying something, right? And the interesting thing is it doesn't need to be a big product. It can be something really small, right? Like for example, you you have presentations at your workplace every month, right? And you're tired of writing the slides yourself. Can you find a way of using Claude to do that? You want to be writing LinkedIn posts about what you're learning in HealthTech. Can you use Claude to write that? And then watch YouTube videos for how to make it look good and make it something that people want to read, right? So, and then make and Zapier are tools for actually automating the process. So what that means, for example, is if in your hospital they send they send schedules of like call schedules, like using paper, like somebody just writes it down on paper. Can you just build something that takes that and then sends it to Claude, for example, and then it builds it out as a one-page website where everybody can then see, right? But what this means is there's limited options for excuses now because you can already get started. and get started for free, right? You don't need to start by paying, right? So then Superbase and Firebase are just ways to store the information of users, of the product itself as you go on, right? But first is you can get started by just picking one of these. So you can pick ChatGPT, for example, come up with like what you want to build, then set up codex, right? Or set up Lovable. And you'll find that just looking online, you'll find one or two videos that go into detail about this really, really quickly. Then I also put Canva, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, because now that I say there's no excuse for not building what you have an idea for, it also means that what then becomes important is the audience, right? Convincing people that they should use your product, convincing people to pay to use your product, convincing people to talk about your products with their friends, convincing people to get to try your product. And so what this means is content creation or speaking about like what you are doing is a very good way to kickstart your product. It's a very good way to get people interested and interested in your journey too, right? So finally, I just came up with like 3 ideas that you could shape in 2 weekends, right? And it'll be interesting if anybody's interested in doing this and actually does it and finds a way to reach out to me. It'll be really, really nice. So first is drug interaction checker. And the interesting thing about this is that one of my friends, this is how we actually met. He was and is still building a chatbot for that takes a patient medication list and then flags risky combinations. What that means is if the patient is pregnant and then is using a teratogene or a teratogenic drug, which is like a drug that could be dangerous for the child or the child in her womb, right? How do you flag that? How do you catch that on time, right? And there are so many drugs on it, right? So what that means is a doctor cannot put all of the drugs in their head, but like just a place where a doctor or a patient can just upload all of their drugs and say, okay, like how can this drug affect this drug? Or how can this drug affect me as a person? Or like what are the side effects I should be looking out for? And then second one will just be antenatal visit reminder bots of like, okay, you're pregnant woman, will call you or will text you, and like a WhatsApp bot that will text you, or like a bot that will even call you and say, hey, what's up? I will speak you about Hausa or Igbo and say, hey, what's up? Please, it's time for your next antenatal appointment on Monday, so please prepare for it. Or a patient describes their symptoms and then the AI suggests with lab tests a clinician should order, right? So all of these are ideas that you can already get started with. And the interesting thing, which is what I love about all of them, is that they require AI too, or some knowledge of AI in terms of like building it with AI in the mix, especially the first idea and the third one, right? And so for the first idea, for example, my friend who's building this product, the name of the product is Mama, MAR, and they won $25,000 from grants from I think Meta, which is Facebook, last year, right? So the last year or this year, or last year. So what that means is that the possibilities are endless. And so now it's your turn. If you have any questions, so I can just go through some of these questions that I've put here. Of that, how do I find a technical co-founder or somebody who can code to build the ideas that I have? And I think first is try and build something yourself, something small, right? If you build something small, people are likely to come on board with you and work with you when they know that you have taken the first huge step. Then, is it legal for me to build an health app without a license? It depends on the health app you're trying to build. If, for example, you're trying to build a product where doctors can speak to patients, then you need qualified doctors to actually speak to the patients, not you yourself, if you are not licensed to speak to patients. Then how do you raise the first money without traction, right? Or like without having users yet? This is where like hackathons are super important. And I think hackathons cannot be overstated, right? So, and there's so many health tech hackathons now. I think there's one by Helpmom, by Care Code, that would be paying like the winner maybe 2 million, if I remember correctly. There are so many other ones like that that you can already start to build your idea for. And then if you get some money there, you're likely to be able to convince one of your friends who's a software engineer to help you to come on board with you and build the product together, right? And so, what is the smallest thing I can ship this month? Honestly, anything you can think about. If you really want to do it, you would find a way to do it. And like that's the interesting thing. We we all, if we have not played the game this month, we have watched the movie. If we have not watched the movie this month, we've listened to music, right? And so what that means is that there's always like 30 minutes of your time that you can find every single day to really do this and to really show up for like getting started with an tech product. And the interesting thing is you don't need to sit down the line or say, okay, I know that for sure in 1 month's time, I will get 1 million to continue to build this, or I'll get a job. But the beautiful thing too is that because you don't know the possibilities, then it's best to just do things in a way where the possibilities surprise you, right? So, for example, you're looking for a job, or build something and talk about it every single day on LinkedIn or on Twitter or Instagram. And then somebody reaches out and says, oh, we love what you're building, we would like to invest, we love what you're doing. Can you come and build or join us in building at our company? Or can we talk some more? Or like, I like what you're building. Can we just become friends? And so, yeah, so like that's how things get started, right? And yeah, so if you have questions, I'll be taking questions now. Thanks so much, everyone. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Aremu. Grateful for your session. I'm sure every member of the audience is equally grateful. We already have a question in the chat, and I can see Oluwatomi Singh, Tommy Luju raising her hand. But before we take Oluwatomi Singh's question, I would read out the one we have in the chat. You mentioned that building a HealthTech product requires 3 layers. Can I specialize in any of the three? Maybe operations or marketing? Or do I have to have a knowledge of all 3 layers? That question is from Jesutowo Ajadi.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, Jamila, thank you for asking. Oh, Jesutowo, I think. Okay, no, Jesutowo. Okay, well, thank you so much for the question. I think your name is really beautiful. I think the like my answer to that question would be one, building out an idea on your own requires you to have like some of these skills, or that would require you to do something regarding the like this 2 or 3 skills that I've mentioned, which is operations, marketing, and technology. And I can just break that down like how it would look is that if, for example, you are building a product like using Cloud Code or Cloud or ChatGPT, for example, that's technology, right? If you then go on and talk about it on your LinkedIn and say, oh, I built this today, or this is the part that I built today, that's marketing, right? If you then go on and say, oh, how do I get, how do I ensure that, oh, this continues to work? And then you go to an hackathon, for example, or like, and then you go and pitch it. That's also operations, right? You're not trying to find partners or people who can give you money. Or you say, okay, let me message these 5 investors and see if anybody's interested. That's operations, right? And so all of these things are super important. Or for example, a user comes to meet you and says, oh, I like what you have done, oh, but I would like you to do this instead. Or I would like you to add this instead, right? That's customer care. Customer care is under operations. So what that means is all of these are super important. it would be helpful if you have one or two other people who are helping you on the journey, which are like, oh, somebody else is doing customer care, somebody else is doing this. But the point that I'm hoping that you have gotten from this conversation so far is that you can already start, right? That with all of the AI tools, you can already start doing things yourself. And that if you can already start, the likelihood is there that anybody who's coming on board to join you is excited because they've seen what you have done on your own, and then they're like, okay, I can come on board and do this too. And so what I've tried to do in this conversation is to talk about building an HealthTech product, right? If you are trying to do it to get a job, it would be helpful to focus on one particular part, which is, okay, I want to be a front-end engineer, I want to be a back-end engineer, I want to be a customer care person, I want to be a marketer, right? So choosing to focus on one particular part would be really good. And so, for example, if you want to be a marketer and you want to do it in healthcare, how I'll think about it is, okay, now start to analyze healthcare products, right? Download an app on your phone, see, okay, does the messaging work, right? You look at the copy, do you understand what they do? And then, for example, you can go to LinkedIn and then write about it. Oh, I don't understand this, or I understand this better now. And the interesting thing is people are actually looking at it. People are reading what you write on LinkedIn, right? So, for example, I read a LinkedIn post by a lady who was saying, oh, that Carol Rice is actually putting out a lot more ads and doing a lot more advertising than Piggyvest, right? Within the next 2 weeks, I saw that the Piggyvest was doing ads on Snapchat, and I was like, wow, right? So the point of what I'm saying is that the insights you have or the insights you cover would be really, really important for like your target audience. Like depending on what your goal is, to get a job, to get people to invest in your company, or to just see your idea out there and people using it. Yeah, then just go for it. Yeah. So I really hope I've answered that question.
Oh, yes, you have. Thank you for a very explicit response. Oluwatomisin Tomoluju, please ask your question. We are far behind time. Oh, we have so little time left, so please ask your question quickly.
Okay, thank you very much for the session, Mr. Dr. Opeyimika. Um, you mentioned that um, we don't have to like wait to start something. I mean, you don't have to wait till you get the skills, the necessary skills. We can use the available tools. How do we balance that with actually knowing those things? Because now people say it's not best to leave everything to AI to do. It's good to actually know the fundamentals and know how those things work. How do we, for someone that is just starting to learn some of those tools, how do we balance actually starting to build something and actually learning what those things entail and how to go about them? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for that. I think the answer is with any other skill that you're trying to learn. If you're trying to learn how to swim, for example, a swim coach will teach you for like, or we talk to you for a few minutes or like 1 hour. If you're learning to drive, and they would show you the parts or the wheels, they will show you the gear, they will show you the brake, they will show you the accelerator, they will show all of these parts. They will talk to you about it. But the way to do it is to get started like driving. The way to learn to swim is to get in there and swim. And the way to also do this best is to actually learn by doing, right? Because if you learn by doing, if you get stuck actually want to understand what's causing about this problem or learn more about this particular part of the product. And I think that's like one of the beautiful ways to approach it, of that you are constantly allowing the problems that you're facing to teach you, right, and to improve you. And what that means is that the first product you build may not be the best product, but that the second one would benefit from the lessons you learned from the first, right? And so So yeah, thank you. I really hope that answers the question.
Thank
Yes.
thank you, Dr. Opeyimika. Yeah, we enjoyed your session. It was very practical, highly illustrative. And one thing I've observed from the sessions we've had so far today, there are things that every they've engaged people on how to delve practically into health tech. And if you know what you're doing, I'm sure you'd have realized one or two things that you can do better or you would like to do following these sessions. Interestingly, the next session we'll have is an equally engaging one. We'll be doing more of talking. I'll be interacting with you, asking questions. You share your insights about the ideas I have, and hopefully we can, at the end of the day, we would have something good to work with. I look forward to it, and I hope you do as well. So thank you again, Dr. Aremu, for your session. It was very great having you in this workshop.